August 31st, 1939. A rail yard near Oppeln on the German-Polish border. The air is thick with the smell of coal smoke and hot metal. Lieutenant Kurt Richter of the Wehrmacht Quartermaster Corps runs a gloved hand over a wooden crate, his checklist trembling slightly. Around him, the final, frantic preparations for Fall Weiss, the invasion of Poland, are reaching their crescendo. The rhythmic clank of tank treads, the shouts of NCOs, the hiss of steam from a dozen locomotives create a symphony of impending war. Overhead, the late summer sky is a placid, indifferent blue. To any observer, this is the picture of overwhelming power. An army of over 1 million men poised like a coiled spring. The new Panzer divisions, symbols of a revolutionary way of war, sit gleaming with fresh paint. The propaganda reels have already been filmed, celebrating this unstoppable Teutonic tide. But Lieutenant Richter is not watching the propaganda. He is staring at the numbers on his clipboard, and his stomach is a cold knot of dread. The numbers tell a different story. The ammunition stocks for the field artillery, sufficient for perhaps 3 weeks of sustained combat. The reserves of Pervitin, the methamphetamine tablets issued to keep the troops alert, plentiful. But the fuel for the Panzers and the Stuka dive bombers, critically low. So low, in fact, that the entire campaign is predicated on capturing Polish fuel depots within the first 48 hours. The rubber for the truck tires, the tungsten for the machine tools, the high-grade iron ore needed for steel production. The ledgers in Berlin are already screaming with deficits. The German war machine, on the eve of its great debut, is running on fumes. It is a gambler's throw, a desperate lunge, built on the hope of a quick victory because it cannot afford a long fight. Now, rewind the clock 25 years. August 1st, 1914. Berlin. The Unter den Linden Boulevard is a sea of humanity. Men in straw boater hats and women with extravagant feathers wave black, white, and red imperial flags. The mood is not one of grim necessity, but of euphoric certainty. They call it the spirit of 1914. This is not a bankrupt state lurching into conflict. This is the German Empire, the most powerful industrial nation in Europe, going to war. In the vaults of the Reichsbank on Jägerstrasse sits one of the largest gold reserves in the world, the foundation of the rock-solid gold mark. In the Ruhr Valley, a forest of smokestacks belonging to Krupp, Thyssen, and 100 other industrial giants belches smoke day and night. Germany is the world's leader in chemicals, in optics, in electrical engineering. It produces more steel than Britain, France, and Russia combined. When Kaiser Wilhelm II signs the mobilization order, he is not making a desperate gamble. He is unleashing a true superpower. His army is the most professional on the planet. His general staff a revered institution of meticulous planning. Unlike the Wehrmacht of 1939, which will rely on horse-drawn carts for over 70% of its logistics, the Imperial German Army moves on an unparalleled network of state-owned railways, a marvel of modern efficiency. The Kaiser's Germany enters the war with a full pantry. It possesses vast stockpiles of raw materials. Its chemists, like Fritz Haber, can literally pluck nitrogen from the air to create nitrates for explosives and fertilizers, making the nation immune to the traditional effects of a naval blockade on ammunition production. This is a nation built for endurance, for a long, grinding struggle of attrition, a war of material. Its economic heart is a blast furnace, ready to forge a continent-spanning empire. Back on the Polish border in 1939, Lieutenant Richter hears the distant drone of aircraft engines being tested. The sound of the new Germany. A sound of terrifying, violent potential. But he cannot shake the numbers on his clipboard. He knows the secret that the cheering crowds in Berlin do not. The gleaming shell of the Third Reich is hollow. It is an empire of illusion, sustained by propaganda and the promise of loot. As the first Panzer I tanks begin to rumble toward the border in the gathering dusk, they are not just rolling toward Poland. They are rolling away from an economic cliff, hoping that the spoils of war will arrive before the bill for creating this army comes due. The first battle of the Second World War would not be against the Polish army. It would be against Germany's own balance sheets.
Berlin 1935. Die Office von Hjalmar Schacht, Präsident der Reichsbank und Minister von Ökonomie. Der Ruhm ist paneled in dark, imposantes Wood, but die Atmosphäre ist eines silent, fräntisch Aktivität. Schacht, ein Mann mit einem hohen Collar und einem hawk-like Stare, ist ein Finanzwizard, ein Meister von Komplexinstrumenten und fiskaler Illusion. Hier ist der Architekt von Hitlers ökonomischem Miracle und er ist bilden es mit Ghost Money. Das Problem facing den Nazi-Regime ist simpel. How do you rearm eine nation that is broke? Das Treaty of Versailles hat stripped Germany von es Industrieregionen, es Kolonien und es Gold. Die große Depression hat ravet was lebt. Hitler demand Tanks, Plans und Battleships, but the treasury is empty. Dis ist, wo Schacht performt sein Magic Trick. Er invent die Mefo-Bill. You can think of it as a form of shadow currency. Eine Shell Company, die Metallurgische Forschungsgesellschaft oder MEFO, ist kreiert. Wenn eine Company wie Krupp oder Messerschmitt geht einen Order von dem Government, sie werden nicht in Reichsmarks bezahlt. Sie werden mit einem Bill von entgegen bezahlt, ein IOU von MEFO. This Bill ist garantiert durch den Staat und kann traded zwischen Companies oder entgegengenommen für reale Currency an der Reichsbank. In Essence, Schacht ist running den entire Rearmaments-Programm auf the books, auf einem massiven State-Sponsored Credit Card. It is a stroke of genius. Es heilt die true Scale von Military Spending, fools foreign creditors und kreiert eine Explosion von Employment. Die Autobahns reisen von der Erde, die Wehrmacht paradet its new equipment und der Welt sieht eine resurgent Germany, ein Phönix reisend von den Aschen. But Schacht knows the truth. Die MEFO-Bills sind eine Time Bomb. Sie sind eine Promise to pay, das der Staat kann possibly honor. Bei 1938, diese Ghost Bills account für näherlich halb aller Government Spending. Die einzige Weg zu pay the debt ist with more debt oder mit something else entirely, Plunder. Der Anschluss mit Austria ist nicht nur ein politischer Triumph, it is a desperate bank heist. Die German Army rollt into Vienna und macht eine straight line für die australische Nationalbank, seizing its gold reserves, um momentan prop up das kollapsende Haus von Cards. Die Invasion von Tschechoslowakei, das folgt, ist the same story. Die Gold- und Foreign Currency Reserves des Tschechstaats sind nicht ein Bonus, sie sind eine Necessity, um die German-Ökonomie von implodieren. Contrast this with the Imperial Germany of the Kaiser. In 1914, Germany's economy is a fortress. Its currency is backed by gold. Its industries are financed by deep domestic capital markets und der Welt's most powerful universal banks wie Deutsche Bank und Dresdner Bank. Wenn die War beginnt, das Financing ist immens, aber it is conventional. The government issues war bonds, Kriegsanleihe, zu seinen eigenen Bürgern. Und die Citizens kaufen sie mit patriotischem Fervor, weil sie vertrauen in den Staat und, mehr important, sie haben die Savings dazu zu tun. Der German Middle Class von der 1910s ist prosperous, sein Wohlstand gebaut auf Dekaden von industrieller Expansion. Der Kaisers War ist paid for mit dem realen Profits des Welts most dynamischen Ökonomie. Hitlers War ist paid for mit promissory notes, drawn on the future conquest of others. This fundamental difference diktiert den entire character of their respective conflicts. Imperial Germany kann planen für eine lange War, weil seine economic foundations sind deep und solid. It can withstand a blockade, innovate its way around shortages und mobilisiert its entire society für eine protracted struggle. Nazi Germany cannot. It is structured for Blitzkrieg, lightning war, out of sheer economic necessity. It must win quickly, seize the resources of its victims und immediately use that loot to finance the next short, sharp campaign. It is the strategy of a predator, not a superpower. It must constantly move forward, devouring new territory, because the moment it stops, the financial house of cards collapses. Die Panzers rumbling into Poland sind nicht nur eine militärische Spearhead, sie sind die Armed Debt Collectors für ein Bankrottregime.
June 22, 1919. Scapa Flow, Orkney Islands, Scotland. A desolate, grey anchorage under a weeping sky. The interned German High Seas Fleet, the pride of the Kaiser, lies at anchor. It is a ghost fleet, a steel city of 74 warships, including 11 of the world's most powerful dreadnought battleships. Men like Rear Admiral Ludwig von Reuter, the fleet's commander, look out from the bridge of the battleship Friedrich der Grosse and see not just their ships, but the embodiment of Germany's global ambition. This fleet was the second largest on the planet. Forged in the naval arms race against Great Britain, it was the life's work of Grand Admiral Alfred von Tirpitz. His risk theory was simple and terrifying. Build a fleet so powerful that even if Britain defeated it, the Royal Navy would be so crippled that it would lose its mastery of the seas. It was a direct challenge for world power. At the Battle of Jutland in 1916, this fleet met the British Grand Fleet in the greatest naval battle of the modern age. The Germans sank more ships and suffered fewer casualties, proving their ship designs, their gunnery, and their training were second to none. Though they failed to break the British blockade, they had proven they were a peer competitor, a titan worthy of challenging the master of the oceans. Now, as von Reuter gives the secret signal, German sailors opened the seacocks on their own vessels. The High Seas Fleet, in a final act of defiance, scuttles itself, disappearing beneath the waves rather than be handed over to its enemies. It is a Viking funeral for an era of German naval might. Now, fast forward to September 3, 1939, the port of Wilhelmshaven. The German fleet, the Kriegsmarine, is a shadow. The ambitious Plan Z naval construction program, which called for a massive fleet of battleships, aircraft carriers, and cruisers to challenge Britain by 1948, is a fantasy on paper. Hitler has started the war nearly a decade too soon for his navy. What Grand Admiral Erich Raeder has at his disposal is a paltry force. 2 battlecruisers, Scharnhorst and Gneisenau. 3 pocket battleships, Deutschland, Admiral Scheer, and Admiral Graf Spee, which are marvels of engineering, designed to outrun anything that can outgun them and outgun anything that can outrun them. But they are commerce raiders, not ships of the line. The entire surface strength of the Kriegsmarine in 1939 is smaller than the force the Kaiser lost in a single afternoon at Jutland. There are no true battleships to match Britain's. The 2 that are building, Bismarck and Tirpitz, are still months from completion. There are no aircraft carriers. The navy that goes to war under the swastika is fundamentally different in purpose and scale from the one that sailed under the Imperial ensign. The High Seas Fleet was built to meet the Royal Navy in a decisive line-of-battle engagement to win control of the sea. The Kriegsmarine is a corsair fleet. Its purpose is not to win command of the sea, but to deny it to the enemy. To sink merchant ships, to disrupt convoys, to wage a guerrilla war on the trade routes that are Britain's lifeline. You can feel the difference in the mindset. The Kaiser's admirals thought in terms of grand fleets and decisive battle. Hitler's admirals, men like Karl Donitz of the U-boat arm, think in terms of tonnage warfare and attrition. The U-boat is the Kriegsmarine's only truly effective weapon, a testament to its inability to compete on the surface. For a veteran sailor who had served on the dreadnought SMS Bayern at Jutland and now found himself on the cruiser Admiral Hipper in 1939, the contrast would have been breathtaking. The old fleet was a statement of national power, a symbol of industrial might meant to cow the world. The new fleet is a collection of specialist tools for a specific, limited job. It cannot protect Germany's coastlines. It cannot project power. It cannot break a blockade. It can only raid, harass, and hope to starve its enemy into submission before its own nation, already sealed off from the world by the Royal Navy from the war's first day, starves first.
Berlin 1912. Das große Generalstabsbuilding auf dem Königsplatz. Das Atmosphäre ist eines monastischer Seilens, brochen ohne nur das Russel von Papieren und der quaie Scratch von Fountainpens auf Maps. Hier, in der Nerve Center der preußischen Militärtradition, war es treated nicht als chaotische Art, sondern als präzise Science. Men mit Namen wie von Moltke, von Schlieffen und Ludendorff sind nicht nur Soldaten, der sind die High-Priester eines Kult der operationalen Planung. Der deutsche Generalstab ist eine Institution unandehnbare. Er ist das Staatsbrain, eine meritokratische Body, das selektiert die most brillanten Offiziere und traint sie in einem rigorosen, standardisierten Methodik von Kommand.
Der sprechen eine kommende Lange von Taktik und Strategie. Der Werk ist metikulös, exhaustiv. Der famose Schlieffenplan für ein Zweifront-War gegen Frankreich und Russland ist nicht ein vages Konzept. Es ist ein Stack von Dokumenten, detaillieren die präzise Timetables für Hunderte von Trains, die exakt tägliche Marschdistanzen für every Corps, die logistische Requirements down zu den letzten Bullet und Loaf von Brett. Wenn Imperial Deutschland geht zu War, ist das so like eine vast und intrikate Clockwerkmechanismus, jed Gier und Spring kalibriert zu performen seine Funktion. Der Kaiser mag der supreme Commander, aber in Realität, er ist eine Figurhead. Der War ist ran von den professionellen Soldern des Generalstabs. Der Leadership ist cold, analytisch, oft brutal und fantastisch effizient. Es ist ein System, nicht ein Zingelmann, das die Macht des deutschen Empire ausrichtet. Dieses System ist stark genug zu widerstehen den Schock von ersten Fehlern, adapt seine Strategien und fight die kombinierte industrielle Power der britischen, französischen und russischen Empire zu einem Stillstand für 4 blutige Jahre. Nun lieb Vorwart zu 1942. Der Wolfslehr, Hitlers Hauptquartiere in Eastpreußen. Der A in dem konkreten Bunker ist Stahl, dick mit Zigarettenrauch und Tension. Hier gibt es keine quaie Scholarship von Vaughan, der ist nur der Führersmonolog. Adolf Hitler, surrounded von einer Clique von sykophantischen Generalen wie Keitel und Jod, stabst ein Finger auf eine Map des Eastern Front. Er dismisst den professionellen Rat seiner Feldkommandanten. Er ignoriert logistische Realitäten. Er macht strategische Entscheidungen basiert auf Willenskraft, Intuition und perceived Prestige. Die Leadership des Dritten Reichs ist kein System. Es ist ein chaotischer Web von kompetierenden Persönlichkeiten, alle orbiten einen immer erratischen Sonn. Das traditionelle Generalstab stählt noch Ehe, aber es ist haargemocht, sein Einfluss subvertiert. Power ist fraktioniert. Hermann Göring rennt die Luftwaffe als sein privates Empire, kompetiert vor Ressourcen. Heinrich Himmlers SS operiert eine State within a State mit seiner eigenen Armee. Albert Speer, der Armamentsminister, battelt mit Faktorenownern und Partygauleiters. Es ist ein feudales Kurt, nicht eine moderne Kommandstruktur. Alles enthält Hitlers Fava. Und Hitler selbst ist ein Wirbel von Contradictions. Ein taktischer Genie auf der einen Seite, kapabel von brillanten Einsichten. Aber er ist auch ein Mann, gefühlt von einem Cocktail von Drogen, administriert von seinem persönlichen Physicier Theodor Morell, eine tägliche Regiment von Amphetaminen, Opiates und strenger Konkoktiens. Seine Ragen sind legendäre. Sein Refusium zu erlauben taktische Retreats termt manageable setbacks in katastrophale Einschlusserungen, most famously at Stalingrad. Wo der imperiale Generalstab sah Armeen als Kollektionen von Men und Material mit quantifizierbaren Limits, Hitler sieht sie als Instrumente seines Willens, kapabel von allem, wenn proper motiviert vom nationalsozialistischen Fanatismus. Dieses chaotische, persönlichkeitsgetriebene System ist perfekt geeignet für die schorte opportunistischen Kampagnen von 1939 bis 1941. Hitlers Wille zu gambeln, zu trauen seinem Instinkt, schättert das couche, konventionelle Denken seiner Opponenten. Aber wenn der War zu einer globalen, industriellen Streit der Attrition wird, derselbe kein War der Kaisers Deutschland gebaut war zu führen, die Nazi-Leadership-Struktur beginnt zu kracken unter der Strähnung. Die Clockwerk-Präzision von 1914 hat sich ersetzt durch die furiose, unpräzise und unanständige Willens eines Manns.
Winter 1943. A frozen steppe near Kharkov on the Eastern Front. Oberleutnant Hans von Luck, a commander in Erwin Rommel's old 7th Panzer Division, feels the biting wind cut through his greatcoat. His command, a Panzer IV Ausfeft Gay, sits silently beside a snow-dusted farmhouse, its engine cold. The reason is simple, and it is the same reason that has haunted the German army since the invasion began: no fuel. A few kilometers away, a new Soviet offensive is gathering strength, but his spearhead is paralyzed. This single, frustrating moment is the culmination of every weakness inherent in the Nazi state. It is the end result of a war started by a bankrupt nation, fought with a corsair navy, and directed by a chaotic leadership. The bill for the Superpower Myth is finally coming due. The economic house of cards, built by Hallmar Schacht on ghost money and plunder, has collapsed.
By 1943, even with Albert Speer's rationalization of the war economy, German production is dwarfed by the industrial might of its enemies. The United States alone is producing more aircraft every few months than Germany can in a year. The desperate reliance on blitzkrieg, on short wars funded by loot, has failed. Germany is now trapped in the one conflict it could never win, a long, grinding war of material, the very war its imperial predecessor was so well equipped to fight. The lack of fuel in von Luck's tank is a direct consequence of the Kriegsmarine's failure. With the Royal Navy and U.S. Navy controlling the seas, Germany is cut off from the world's oil fields. Its only sources are the synthetic fuel plants in the Ruhr, which are now being systematically pounded into rubble by Allied bombers, and the Romanian fields at Ploiești, a single vulnerable lifeline. The Kaiser's Germany, by contrast, had entered its war with a far more robust resource base and overland access to allies and neutral trade. It had the industrial and scientific depth to innovate its way out of shortages for 4 years. Hitler's Germany, blockaded from day one and built on a shallower economic foundation, finds itself stretched to the breaking point. The tungsten for armor-piercing shells, the chromium and nickel for steel alloys, the rubber for tires, every front commander's report is a litany of desperate scarcity. The German soldier of 1943 is often better armed than his 1914 counterpart, but he is far more poorly supplied. He fights with superior tanks that he cannot fuel and advanced aircraft that he cannot build fast enough. And the leadership? The Führer's fury, which had once seemed like a font of strategic genius, has become a liability. His declaration of war on the United States in December 1941 was a gratuitous act of strategic suicide, a decision the calculating generals of the Kaiser's era would have considered insane. His obsession with holding every inch of ground on the Eastern Front leads to the annihilation of the Sixth Army at Stalingrad, a blow from which the Wehrmacht will never recover. The cold institutional logic of the old general staff has been replaced by ideological fanaticism, and the price is paid in the lives of men like Hans von Luck's crew, freezing in a silent tank. The Third Reich was not a superpower. It was a terrifying spectacle. Its initial victories were the result of a revolutionary tactical doctrine, the cowardice of its opponents, and a gambler's willingness to risk everything on a single throw. But behind the facade of Leni Riefenstahl's propaganda films, behind the gleaming panzers and screaming Stukas, was a hollow structure. A state living on borrowed time and stolen money, with a navy that couldn't leave port and a command system that devolved into a madman's court. The Germany of Kaiser Wilhelm II was a true heavyweight champion, a titan of industry and military professionalism that took on the entire world and nearly won. The Germany of Adolf Hitler was a desperate brawler, landing spectacular knockout blows in the early rounds, but lacking the stamina, the substance, and the stability to go the distance. It was, from its very first day of war, destined to burn itself out.